she hugged the wrong man at the airport and accidentally fell in love with a millionaire. She didn't mean to hug a stranger. She really didn't. But there she was, arms wrapped tightly around the wrong man at gate 32, with tears in her eyes and a name on her lips that didn't belong to him. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of 3 years apart. The man she embraced froze, not the kind of freeze that came with surprise, but the kind that meant something had just shifted in the universe, like something long lost had brushed past him. He didn't pull away. That's when Olivia realized it wasn't Lucas. The shoulders weren't right. The scent, fresh cedar and something like old paperbacks, was completely unfamiliar. And when she stepped back, her face went white. I'm so sorry," she gasped, cheeks burning. "I thought you were someone else." The man blinked, slowly, like he'd just woken from a dream. He didn't look annoyed. If anything, he looked curious. His eyes held a flicker of something unspoken. He was in his mid-30s, maybe older, wearing a dark gray coat and carrying a leather satchel that looked more expensive than her rent. His expression was calm, almost gentle. "It's okay," he said, his voice low and steady. "You looked like you needed that hug more than I didn't." She let out a breathless laugh, awkward and embarrassed. "You must think I'm crazy." He smiled. "Only a little." Olivia didn't have time for small talk. The real Lucas, the ex she hadn't seen since the world fell apart, was supposed to land any minute now. She turned back toward the arrival board, her heart pounding for more reasons than one. But when she looked back, the stranger was gone, just vanished into the sea of people like he was never there. Olivia Hart hadn't planned to be at the airport that day, but when Lucas called out of the blue saying he'd be in town for 48 hours and wanted to talk, her stomach dropped. Regret, curiosity, and 1,000 unsaid things drove her straight to Terminal 2, clutching an old photo in her jacket pocket. She didn't expect anything, maybe an apology, maybe closure. What she didn't expect was to feel something with a complete stranger in a 10-second hug. Later that night, Olivia couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the hug in her mind, the scent, the warmth, the silence that somehow said more than Lucas had in their last 5 phone calls. Speaking of Lucas, their meeting had been as underwhelming as her instincts feared. He looked tired, said all the wrong things, apologized too little, too late. And when he finally left, there was nothing in Olivia's chest but emptiness. But that stranger, she couldn't even remember his name. Wait, had he given her his name? No, he hadn't. Just like that, he became the mystery. A hug she didn't mean to give, but somehow needed more than anything. Olivia was a graphic designer, mostly working freelance, mostly underpaid, mostly tired. But the next day, in the morning, as she grabbed coffee from the corner cafe, something unusual caught her eye. Across the street near the bookstore window, a man stood holding a coffee cup. Gray coat, leather satchel. Her heart leapt. It was him. She hesitated for a second, then crossed the street, too fast, not fast enough. But when she reached the sidewalk, he was gone again. Was she imagining him now? This was ridiculous. But something inside her stirred, not like longing, not yet, but like curiosity that wouldn't die. 3 days later, it happened again. This time, it was at the library downtown. She was there for a project, flipping through typography books, when a familiar voice floated from the quiet reading area. She peered around the bookshelf. There he was, sitting alone, reading, a coffee cup beside him. And just like before she could step closer, he stood, packed his things, and disappeared. It felt intentional, like he knew she was watching. Another week passed. Olivia tried to forget. She even went on a date with someone her roommate set her up with. It was fine. Boring, but fine. and that made her sad in a way she couldn't explain. Back at home, she opened her laptop and stared at her work screen for an hour. Then she opened a blank page and typed, "I hugged a stranger at the airport, and something about that moment won't let me go." She stared at the sentence, deleted it, then wrote it again. Why did this matter so much? Who was he? It was raining. Olivia had missed her train and decided to cut through the art museum to get to the other side of town faster. She walked quickly, head down, until a soft piano melody stopped her in her tracks. She turned. There, in the quiet gallery, was a small music exhibit, and sitting at the old Steinway was him, fingers brushing the keys like they'd been waiting a long time for this moment. She froze. He looked up, and this time, he saw her. He smiled. She stepped into the room. "Hi," she said softly. "I was starting to think you weren't real," he answered, standing. "You disappear a lot," she replied, "or maybe I just show up when you need me." Her heart skipped. He held out his hand. "I'm Elliot," and she took it finally. "Olivia." They stood there, fingers still touching, in the middle of the quiet room, the music lingering between them. This time, he didn't vanish. But he did say something that made her pulse race. "I think we were supposed to meet again." She opened her mouth to reply, and then, from behind them, a voice called out, "Mr. Reed, your driver's waiting." Elliot turned toward the voice, and Olivia noticed, for the first time, the small gold crest embroidered on his coat. She frowned. "Reed? Like Elliot Reed?" He nodded, suddenly looking like a man with a very big secret. She stepped back. "As in, Reed Enterprises? The publishing company?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked quietly, "Will you have dinner with me tomorrow?" Olivia hesitated, emotions swirling. She looked at him, the man she had hugged by accident. Now she wasn't sure if it was an accident at all. Olivia didn't say yes to dinner right away, not because she didn't want to, but because something about all of it, the hug, the chance meetings, the sudden reveal of his last name, made her feel like she was standing in someone else's dream. "I need to think about it," she told him, unsure if her voice was firm or just nervous. Elliot nodded, as if he expected that. "Same cafe you like," he said. "Tomorrow, 6. Then he smiled like it was already decided, turned and walked away, again leaving her with more questions than answers. The next day, Olivia spent half the morning pacing her apartment and the other half Googling Elliot Reed. There he was, article after article, CEO's son. Quiet, mysterious, rarely gave interviews. Known in the publishing world as a bit of a recluse. Brilliant with stories, almost never seen in public. There were no scandals, no tabloid drama, just success, silence, and one photo of him at a gala, looking almost as distant as he had in person. Why was someone like that playing piano in a public museum? Why had he let her hug him like that at the airport? And what on earth did he want with someone like her? She almost didn't go. Almost. At 6:02 p.m., at Café Miro, he was already there, same corner table, same black coat folded neatly beside him. "You're late," he said, a playful flicker in his eyes. "I wasn't sure I'd come," Olivia admitted. "And yet, here you are." They ordered. She picked a simple tea. He didn't eat. The conversation started awkwardly. Favorite books, cities they'd lived in, what they each did for work. He was thoughtful but never boastful, and the way he listened, really listened, made her feel like her words had weight. But then she asked, "Why were you really at the airport that day?" Elliot paused. "My mother died the night before," he said softly. "I was flying back from Boston. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even mean to go home. I just walked through the terminal because I couldn't sit still." Olivia's breath caught. "I'm so sorry." He shook his head gently. "That hug, I didn't know I needed it until it happened." She looked down, unsure what to say. The air between them was thick with something that didn't have a name, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. They walked in the cool air along the river, watching the city lights shimmer. "You didn't answer my question," she said. He glanced at her. "Which one?" "Why me?" Elliot smiled. "Not the charming kind, the real kind. Because you looked like you were searching for someone. And I've been searching for something real for a long time. That should have been the moment. The kiss. The spark. The next step." But Olivia stepped back. "I'm not a story," she whispered. "I don't want to be a mystery you solve, or a project you fix." "I know," he said, hands in his coat pockets, "and I don't want to be a rescue mission." That hung between them for a long second. She turned to walk away, then stopped. "You still want to see me again?" Elliot looked at her, eyes steady. "More than I should." The following week, they didn't speak for 4 days. Olivia went back to work, tried to drown herself in projects, but everything felt faded. Even the colors she used in her designs felt off. Then one afternoon, a package arrived at her door. No name, no card. Inside was a first-edition copy of The Secret Garden, the very book she told him had saved her during her parents' divorce. Pressed inside the cover was a small note. "Some doors open to light even if they're covered in vines. E." She sat on her couch for nearly an hour, staring at the book. She was falling. Not in the fast, breathless way she had with Lucas. This was slower, deeper, and somehow more dangerous. They met again, this time by accident, or maybe fate again, at the used book fair near Whitestone Park. Olivia was flipping through a table of old poetry when a familiar voice behind her said, "Looking for anything specific?" She turned. Her heart did that thing again. "You always appear in the rain," she joked. Maybe the universe knows I don't mind getting wet." He offered her his umbrella. They walked again, talked more. She told him about her childhood, her broken engagement, how she almost gave up on design because of a bad review from a big client. He told her about his brother who left the family business, how Elliot was never supposed to take over the company, but did, out of guilt, out of duty. "We both keep showing up in places we didn't expect to be," he said. "Maybe that's how you find what matters," she replied. Elliot leaned in, almost close enough to kiss, but stopped. "I want to take you somewhere tomorrow," he said. "It's important." She hesitated. "Where?" "It's private." Something in his voice made her pause. It wasn't shady or secretive. It was heavy, vulnerable. "Okay," she said, "tomorrow." He smiled, touched her cheek briefly, and walked off into the rain again. The next day she waited, dressed, ready, phone charged, heart racing. 6 o'clock came, then 7. She called, straight to voicemail. She waited 3 more hours. Then she went online, searched his name, and there it was. Breaking news, front page. Elliot Reed resigns unexpectedly from Reed Enterprises. Sources say personal reasons. Her heart dropped. She didn't know what had happened, why he'd disappeared, but she did know one thing. This wasn't over. The news headline kept flashing on her phone screen like it was mocking her. Elliot Reed resigns, unexpectedly, without a press conference, without a word to her. Olivia stared at the article, reading and rereading the same few vague sentences. Citing personal reasons. Sources close to the family. She hated how cold it sounded, how wrong it felt, because Elliot wasn't cold, he wasn't careless. At least he hadn't been with her. She hadn't known him long, just weeks. A few moments stretched across a handful of accidental meetings and one almost kiss. But she felt him, and now he was gone. Again. That night she sat on the floor of her apartment, the city lights flickering through her window. The first edition of The Secret Garden lay open beside her, the note still tucked inside. She picked it up, running her fingers over the ink again. Some doors open to light, even if they're covered in vines. And for the first time since the dinner that never happened, she noticed something else. At the top corner of the inside cover, in faint pencil, was a small address. Not printed, not typed, just scribbled in careful handwriting. Her heart began to race. Was it where he wanted to take her? Was. She didn't even stop to change. She grabbed her coat, threw the book into her bag, and headed for the train. The address led her far from downtown, to the edge of the city, where the streets turned quiet and the air smelled like old rain and leaves. A small wooden gate stood crooked in the sidewalk, nearly hidden by an overgrown garden. Behind it, an old townhouse, ivy climbing the walls, faded blue shutters, and a faint light glowing from one upstairs window. Olivia hesitated, unsure whether to knock, but the gate creaked open as if inviting her in. She stepped through. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of wood and dust and something warm, like old books and candle wax. The silence wasn't empty. It felt lived in. Safe. She called his name once. No answer. Then she saw it. A framed photo on a side table. Elliot as a child, smiling up at a woman with soft eyes and silver-streaked hair. His mother. Next to it, a second photo. Him and a man who looked almost like a mirror of him. Same eyes, same jaw, but harder, sharper. His brother. The room beyond was a study, and there he was, sitting on the floor, back against the wall, eyes closed. She froze. "Elliot!" He opened his eyes slowly, didn't flinch, didn't look surprised. "I was hoping you'd come," he said. She stepped closer. "You disappeared. I didn't want you to see me like this." "Like what?" He gestured around the room, scattered papers, an untouched dinner plate, his jacket tossed carelessly on the couch. He looked tired, and not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. "I walked away from everything today," he said, "and it felt like ripping my skin off." Olivia knelt beside him, unsure what to say. She didn't want to push, didn't want to lecture. She just wanted to be there. He looked at her for a long moment. "I didn't resign for the reasons they're printing." "Then why?" "My mother's will," he said. "It came through this morning. Turns out she left everything, to my brother." Her eyes widened. "But I thought—" "So did I." He let out a sharp breath. "But she knew I never wanted it. I stayed because it felt like the right thing, the safe thing, but she saw through it. She always did." Olivia touched his hand gently. He didn't pull away. "She left me this house," he continued. "Told me to come here when I felt lost. I haven't been here in 10 years, not since she got sick." Silence filled the space between them again, but this time it was different, softer. "You weren't supposed to see this side of me," he said. I wanted you to see the version that had it all together." "I don't want that version," Olivia said quietly. He looked at her. "I want the real one, even if he's a mess." Something in his face shifted. Not relief, not exactly. More like the moment someone finally lets themselves breathe. He leaned forward, just enough for their foreheads to touch. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "No," she replied honestly, "but I'm still here." Then she kissed him. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't rushed. It was slow, tentative, like they were both testing the ground beneath them. But it was real. And it felt like something they'd both been waiting a long time to find. They sat like that for a while. No plans, no expectations, just two people trying to figure out how to let someone in. When she finally stood to leave, he walked her to the door. "Come back tomorrow?" he asked. She nodded. "If you promise not to disappear again." "I won't," he said. "Not from you." But as Olivia walked back through the gate and into the quiet night, she had no idea what the next morning would bring, and neither did Elliot, because across the street, in the shadows, Someone had been watching them. Someone who wasn't ready to let Elliot walk away from his old life so easily. Olivia walked home that night with her heart full and her mind spinning, somewhere between hope and fear, between the beginning of something and the risk of getting hurt. She still didn't know everything about Elliot, but there was something about him, something wounded, something beautiful, that just made sense in the strangest, most unexpected way. For the first time in a long while, she slept soundly. The next morning, sunlight spilled through her windows like the world was finally letting her breathe again. She got dressed slowly, carefully, not because she was trying to impress him, but because she wanted to feel like herself when she saw him again. That version of herself she had almost forgotten how to be. At 9 a.m., she stepped out of her apartment, holding the secret garden in her hands again like a talisman. The train ride felt shorter this time, like her nerves were still catching up to her excitement. When she reached the ivy-covered gate, she smiled. But something was off. The front door was wide open. She hesitated, then stepped inside. Elliot? No answer. She moved through the house. Kitchen, hallway, study. Everything was exactly where it had been the night before, except for him. His jacket was still on the couch. A cup of tea, barely touched, sat by the window. But he was gone. Olivia's chest tightened. Maybe he went out for a walk. Maybe he didn't think she'd come back. Or maybe... Her thoughts spiraled. She pulled out her phone to text him, but before she could unlock the screen, something caught her eye. On the floor, by the edge of the fireplace, was a small card, a business card. It hadn't been there before. She picked it up slowly. It was black, with gold lettering. Bennett Reed. Reed Enterprises. Chairman Private. Her pulse quickened. Elliot's brother. The one from the photo. The one who, as far as the media knew, had walked away from the company years ago. But now, he was back. Why? Why today? And where was Elliot? Olivia slipped the card into her coat pocket and stepped outside, unsure what to do next. As she reached the sidewalk, she noticed something across the street. A car. Sleek, black, engine running. Windows tinted. She hadn't seen it the night before. Inside, behind the wheel, a man sat watching her. No expression, no movement. She stared for a second. He stared back. Then the car drove away. Fast. Too fast. Olivia's instincts screamed. This wasn't nothing. Back at her apartment, she did something she had promised herself she wouldn't do. She searched for information about Bennett Reed. What she found didn't comfort her. Rumors, whispers, a falling out between the Reed brothers that no one ever explained. Boardroom drama. One insider quoted as saying, "There's a reason only one of them stayed in the spotlight." Whatever had happened, it wasn't clean. And now Bennett had shown up. The day Elliot walked away from everything. She grabbed her coat and headed out again. She needed answers. She needed to find Elliot. It took hours. She tried calling, messaging. Nothing. She checked the cafe, the museum, the library, all the places they'd randomly crossed paths before. Nothing. Just as she was about to give up, she remembered something he'd said on their first walk together, along the river. "There's a cabin, upstate. My mother used to take us there in the fall, when the city felt too loud." It was a long shot, a wild guess. But Olivia didn't hesitate. She took the last train north before dusk and arrived in a tiny town whose streets barely had names. From the station, she walked through the fog and silence until the trees opened to a gravel path. At the end of it, a small wooden cabin tucked beneath a canopy of rust-colored leaves. The lights were on. She knocked once. The door opened almost immediately. Elliot stood there, barefoot, hoodie thrown over a t-shirt. His hair messy, eyes red like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't look surprised. "I figured you'd find me," he said. She stepped inside without a word and closed the door behind her. He sat down on the edge of the old couch, elbows on knees, staring at the floor. Olivia sat beside him, close but not touching. "He came to the house, didn't he?" she asked softly. Elliot nodded. This morning. No warning. What did he want? He swallowed hard. Control. Again. Olivia turned toward him. But the company was left to him. That's what you told me. Elliot let out a humorless laugh. That's what I thought. Turns out, there was another letter, a newer one. My mother wrote it before she died, but never sent it to the lawyers. She left it hidden, in the back of that same book I gave you. Olivia's breath caught. She'd never thought to look there. It says, I get the company, he said. All of it. And he knew. Then why did you resign? Because I don't care about the company anymore. Not in the way he does. He wants the power. I just wanted peace. Silence again. Elliot finally looked at her. When you hugged me at that airport, I hadn't felt human in weeks. I was buried in legacy, in decisions that weren't mine, in pain I didn't know how to name. And then you showed up, completely by accident. And for the first time, I felt free. Olivia didn't speak. She let him talk. I'm scared, he admitted. I've spent so long pretending I'm in control. But with you, I don't know the ending. I don't even know the next page. She took his hand. We'll write it together. He looked at her, something fragile blooming behind his tired eyes, something hopeful. But what if he doesn't back off? Olivia asked. What if Bennett tries to take everything? Elliot looked out the window, where the night had settled deep into the trees. Then let him try. And for the first time, Olivia saw it, not just the quiet, thoughtful man she had grown to care for, but the strength beneath it, the kind of strength that comes not from money or power, but from surviving the moments that were meant to break you. The following morning was quiet. Too quiet. Olivia woke before Elliot. She sat at the window of the cabin, cradling a mug of coffee, watching the fog melt slowly off the lake behind the trees. It was peaceful in a way she hadn't felt since she was a kid, before heartbreaks, before adult worries, before life started asking so much of her. But peace wasn't meant to last. Elliot stirred just after 7. He looked a little more rested, but the weight in his eyes was still there. She didn't push him. Instead, she walked over and sat beside him on the worn leather sofa, placing the book in his lap. I didn't check the back, she said softly. He opened The Secret Garden and carefully flipped to the very last page. Tucked behind it, barely visible, was an envelope, yellowed edges, her mother's handwriting. Elliot didn't speak as he opened it. He just read. Olivia watched his face shift, confusion, disbelief, something close to grief. She changed her mind, he whispered. She wanted me to choose, not be forced. She knew what Bennett would do. She left the company in my name but told me to burn the paper if I didn't want it. She gave me an out. He set the letter down, eyes clouded. I never had a choice before, but now I do. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. So what are you going to do? I don't know yet. But they both knew that choice wouldn't stay theirs for long. By noon, it began. A message popped up on Olivia's phone while they were walking by the lake. Unknown number. Thought you'd want to know. You're in the news. She didn't understand until she opened the link. There it was, a photo of her, from 3 nights ago, standing outside Elliot's townhouse. The headline screamed across the top of the article like it was some juicy scandal. Mystery woman spotted with Reed Air. Sources claim she's behind his sudden exit. Her stomach flipped. More photos followed. One at the cafe, another at the museum, side by side with Elliot. No names, but just enough to make people curious. And worse, just enough to make her a target. She looked at him, panic in her voice. Did you know this would happen? Elliot took her phone, reading the article. Then he handed it back to her gently. My brother did this. You're sure? Yes. Why? Because I didn't play his game, and now he's trying to make you part of it. Olivia sat down on the nearest bench, her hands trembling. I can't handle this. I'm not built for headlines. I design posters. I write copy for travel blogs. I'm not—" She trailed off, overwhelmed. Elliot knelt in front of her. "Listen to me," he said, voice steady. "You don't owe anyone anything. Not them, not my family, and definitely not Bennett. You're not part of this war. I won't let you be." She looked at him. "But I am part of it now." The article didn't stop. It spread like fire. By the evening, her name was trending on Twitter. Her old clients were texting her with concern. A few offers even poured in: radio, podcasts, interviews. She ignored them all, but it didn't stop the growing knot in her chest. Elliot told her they could leave, disappear for a while, go somewhere no one would follow. She almost said yes. Almost. Until she got a call from a blocked number. She answered without thinking. The voice on the other end was sharp, practiced, cold. "Miss Hart, this is Bennett Reed." She didn't speak. "I thought I'd offer you a chance to get ahead of this," he continued, "before things get complicated." "I have nothing to say to you," she said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "You've already said enough, just by being near him." She clenched the phone. "You don't get to control his life anymore." "I don't want control," he said smoothly. "I want balance. You, unfortunately, have tipped that balance." The line went dead. Olivia stared at the screen. She knew what this was, a warning, but she didn't feel scared. She felt angry. That night, Olivia told Elliot everything, about the call, about the fear, about how part of her wanted to run and the other part wanted to fight. He listened carefully. Then he stood, walked to the small fireplace, and threw the letter from his mother into the flames. She gasped. "What are you doing?" "I'm choosing," he said quietly. "Not out of fear, not because of him, but because I'm done living a life that was never mine." She stepped closer. "So what does that mean?" He turned to face her. "It means I'm not going back, not to the company, not to that name. I'll build something new, on my terms." She searched his face. "And me?" He took her hand. "You're the only thing I'm sure of." Tears pressed behind her eyes, not because of the pressure, but because, in all the chaos, she finally felt like she belonged somewhere, someone, with him. But as the flames flickered in the fireplace and the night settled around them, neither of them saw the envelope that had slid under the front door just moments before, white, unmarked. Inside, a single piece of paper, typed, no signature. "You've made your move. Now it's my turn." They didn't see the letter until morning. It had been pushed under the door sometime in the night, resting just past the welcome mat. A single envelope with no return address, no name, no stamp. Elliot picked it up with a strange stillness, as if he already knew what was inside before opening it. He unfolded the paper slowly. Read it once, then again. Olivia watched his face darken, jaw tightening with every second. "What does it say?" she asked. He handed it to her without a word. She read it aloud, voice trembling. "You've made your move. Now it's my turn. You walk away, I show the world what you're hiding." No signature, no logo, but they both knew who sent it. Bennett. Elliot sat down heavily at the edge of the fireplace. "He's bluffing." "Are you sure?" "He doesn't have anything. He's just trying to scare us." "But what if he's not?" Olivia asked, sitting beside him. "What if he does have something?" Elliot didn't answer. His silence was enough. There was something Olivia didn't know yet. She turned to him, heart pounding. "Elliot, what is it?" He looked at her, eyes tired, like he'd aged 5 years overnight. "A few years ago, I signed off on an acquisition, a small publisher. They had some ethical issues with unpaid authors and ghostwriters. We didn't catch it in time." "What happened?" "People got hurt, careers ruined. We paid fines, settled. I thought it was over. But Bennett always said it would come back to bite me. He warned me. Said I should have let the company dissolve it quietly instead of trying to clean it up in public. And now? Now he's going to spin it like I was the one covering it up. Olivia sat back, trying to breathe through the noise in her chest. So what do we do? We wait, Elliot said. He'll make his next move soon, and when he does, I'll be ready. But Olivia wasn't sure she was. She had never wanted to be in the middle of something this big, this messy, but she also knew she couldn't walk away now, not from him. 2 days passed, no news, no letters, no phone calls. Then came the interview. It dropped online at 6 a.m. sharp, an exclusive sit-down with Bennett Reed, speaking for the first time since Elliot's resignation. The video spread like fire. Olivia watched it on her phone, heart in her throat. Bennett was calm, precise, dressed in a tailored suit with an expensive smile. He spoke like a leader, like someone who knew how to own a room. Family business, he said, is complicated, but at the end of the day we all want what's best for the legacy. The interviewer leaned in. There are rumors that your brother's departure wasn't voluntary. Bennett nodded slowly. Elliot made choices that didn't align with the company's values. I believe in transparency, in accountability, and the truth will always find its way. It was vague, calculated, but Olivia knew exactly what he was doing. He was painting Elliot as the villain without ever saying his name, and the world was eating it up. By noon, hashtags were trending, think pieces appeared. People she didn't even know were messaging her on Instagram, digging through her old posts, speculating if she was the reason he left. And then, her name showed up in the headline of an online article. The woman behind the collapse of Reed Enterprises? That was the moment Olivia snapped. She turned off her phone, threw on her jacket, and stormed outside. The cold hit her face like a slap. She needed air, space, clarity. Elliot found her 10 minutes later, sitting on the porch steps, eyes fixed on the trees. I'm sorry, he said, sitting beside her. This isn't your fault. I should have seen it coming. I should have run when I had the chance, she whispered. He looked at her sharply. She hated the hurt in his eyes, but the truth was bleeding out now, whether she wanted it or not. I'm not strong like you, she said. You've spent your whole life dealing with power and pressure. I've spent mine avoiding it. You think I'm strong? He asked, his voice cracking. Olivia, you're here. You stayed. That's strength. She shook her head. I don't know how to keep standing in this. Every time I open my phone, I feel like I'm being erased and rewritten by strangers. He reached for her hand. Then let's take the pen back. She looked at him, confused. What? Let's tell the truth. Our way. On our terms. You mean, go public? I mean, take away his power. You don't fight shadows with more shadows. You bring light. Olivia hesitated. Everything in her screamed no, hide, disappear, protect what little peace they had left. But another part of her, the part that had grown stronger every day since that accidental hug, knew he was right. She had a voice. She just hadn't used it yet. 2 days later, she sat in front of a camera. No script, no team. Just her and Elliot in the cabin, a single mic between them, and her heart pounding like a war drum. She looked into the lens. My name is Olivia Hart, she began. And I didn't mean to become part of this story. I didn't mean to hug a stranger at an airport. I didn't mean to fall for someone the world thinks they already know. Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. What I found in Elliot wasn't money or power. It was honesty, imperfection, kindness, and yes, mistakes. Because we've all made them, but we're not defined by them. She looked over at him. He gave a small nod. We're telling our truth, she continued, not because we want to be the center of attention, but because we refuse to let someone else write it for us. When the video ended, she felt like she'd just stepped off a cliff. But it was done. They had jumped. Together. Now they had to see where they landed. The video went live at noon on a Thursday. No press release, no marketing push, no paid ads, just a single post on Olivia's personal page with the caption, "Sometimes the wrong hug leads to the right story." At first, nothing happened. A few likes, some heart emojis, a couple of people commenting, "This is so raw," and "You're so brave." Then, within the hour, it was everywhere. Hundreds of shares, thousands of comments. By evening, people were quoting her words. "We refuse to let someone else write our story for us." What began as damage control turned into something else entirely: support. Strangers wrote things like, "Thank you for saying what so many of us feel. I never knew who Elliot Reed really was until now." This is what integrity looks like. Olivia sat on the couch in the cabin, knees to her chest, watching the screen, stunned. She didn't know what she expected. Maybe silence. Maybe backlash. Maybe the world wouldn't care. But it did care. And more than that, it listened. Elliot walked in quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea, his face calm but unreadable. "Have you seen this?" she asked, turning the screen to him. He looked down, watching the growing numbers. Then he sat beside her and exhaled, long and slow. "Truth always finds a way," he said softly. She looked at him, then rested her head against his shoulder. "Do you regret it?" she whispered. "Not for a second." They didn't speak for a while. They didn't need to. In the silence, there was peace. The next morning, Bennett called. Elliot stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Hello," he said, voice even. There was a pause on the other end. Then came the voice that had hovered over them like a storm cloud for weeks. "I didn't expect you to fight back," Bennett said. "You never really knew me, did you?" Another pause. "You've caused a mess." "I've cleaned up worse." A sharp exhale from the other side. Not quite anger, not quite admiration, just something tired. "I'm stepping down," Bennett finally said. "You win. I wasn't playing a game." "I know. That's why you did." Click. The line went dead. Elliot stared at the phone, stunned, then slowly turned to Olivia. "It's over." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "He's stepping down. From everything." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" Elliot smiled, a real deep, full smile she hadn't seen in days. "It's over." She threw her arms around him without thinking, the kind of hug that said, "We made it." That said, "Thank you for not letting go." And this time, neither of them pulled away. A week passed. The dust settled. News outlets moved on. The social media frenzy faded, and Olivia's inbox was filled with more freelance work than she could have imagined. But more than the offers, more than the career boost, what stayed with her were the messages from strangers. A woman in Canada. "You reminded me that vulnerability isn't weakness." A teen in Italy. "I hugged a stranger today because of you. He needed it." And an older man from Michigan. "I hadn't spoken to my brother in 12 years. I called him after watching your story." Words were powerful. Olivia had always known that. But this time, they'd changed something real. It was a quiet Sunday when Elliot took her hand and said, "I want to show you something." They drove for hours, through open roads, past hills that rolled like waves, until they reached a small clearing with a half-renovated cottage and a sign out front, the garden house. She stared at it. He smiled. "It's mine. Well, ours. I bought it before everything blew up. I wanted to build a place where people could come and just breathe." She stepped inside. It wasn't finished. The walls were still bare, the floors creaked, but the light poured in through giant windows, and the silence inside wasn't empty. It felt like possibility. "What are you going to do here?" she asked. He looked around slowly. Workshops, writing retreats, maybe just a safe place for people to come when they don't know where else to go. "And us?" He looked at her, steady and sure. "You belong here, if you want to." Olivia didn't answer right away. She just walked to the window, stared out at the open land, the distant trees, and felt something she hadn't in a long time. Stillness. The good kind. She turned back to him. I do. They didn't get married right away. They didn't rush to call each other forever. But they woke up side by side every day, building something from the pieces left behind. She designed the logo for the garden house. He built the bookshelf by hand, even though it was crooked and leaned slightly left. They laughed more than they cried. And when they fought, because of course they did, they always came back to the same truth. They were on the same page, even when reading different chapters. Sometimes Olivia thought about the airport, about that one moment when her arms wrapped around a stranger, and something inside her shifted. If she had arrived 5 seconds earlier or 5 seconds later, if she hadn't gone at all, would they still have found each other? Maybe, maybe not. But the beauty of that moment wasn't just in what came after. It was that it happened at all. A wrong hug, a right heart, a second chance neither of them had been looking for, but both desperately needed. The end. And now I ask you, have you ever had something unexpected? A moment? A person? A mistake? Change your life in a way you never saw coming? Tell me your story in the comments below. I'd really love to read it. Thanks for watching.